On Builders, I interview CEOs, leaders, and entrepreneurs about building their businesses and careers. And today I speak with Jason Weinberger. He is the co founder and CRO of Mother Bear Agency, and they work to scale brands. They work with marketers like me. I know Jason personally, and he's helped to bring clarity and scale to some of the brands I work on. So you'll hear a little bit about that in our conversation. But I think what you'll really get is the importance of having an integrated and holistic approach to marketing. And Jason talks a lot about what he calls the 3 C's: clarity, conversion, and credibility. Hi, Jason. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Getting ready for the holidays, just shopping and all that. Let's start with Mother Bear Agency, where you're a co-founder and CRO. Could you talk about what Mother Bear Agency does, your offerings, and kind of what brands and sweet spots are for you in the agency? Also give us a sense of sort of size.
So we're a marketing and communications agency for scaling brands, which a lot of brands could be scaling. So the way we define it is like a true sort of seed round startup is maybe a little too small for us. I think we think of ourselves as like the agency they grow up with. So they probably have something that's working well, and they're really looking to hit the gas on, strategy or communications acquisition. Or maybe they've had like an agency that they don't love, and we get that a lot. That maybe they, and we're kind of up leveling them a little bit on that end. And then I think on the larger side, it can really range. I mean, we have several sort of clients with $1 billion in revenue. But they're still often growing and scaling. And I think that's a little different from the world I come from, where when I was working at a lot of the big agencies in Chicago, a lot of those brands are really maintaining share. So for example, I worked on Miller Coors for like 5 years, like, John, you already know if you like Miller Lite or not, right? Most people already know the brand's not really changing, and they're not really they probably want to be a scaling company, but I think, right, those aren't. So I think opportunities to work with brands that we see that we can really help grow or are going through a moment of change for us is really exciting. In terms of what we do for them, I think kind of high level, we sort of have the 3 C's. So credibility, conversion, and clarity. So clarity is really like our brand strategy practice. A lot of times clients come to us and want to get straight to conversion, which is it's certainly an end goal, of course. But a lot of times they maybe don't have a great sense of either their brand or their target market and some of those things that would get in the way of skipping to that conversion side. And then on the conversion, once we do have that clarity, we've gotten really good at both hands-on keyboard performance marketing and creative that converts. Has been a unique niche for us. I think we see some agencies are good at one or the other, but we haven't seen a lot of competitors yet that we find are good at both. And then on the credibility space, that's really been a huge growth area for us this year on the PR side. So we really specialize in something called data PR, which isn't super well known. And Katie, one of my partners, she's former head of PR at Zillow. And she worked with the chief economist there to really make the Zillow's estimate big. So that's right, using proprietary data, building a brand story around it that gets coverage. And our team's become pretty uniquely good at that, which has allowed us to really have some success this year and win some pretty big clients.
So maybe back to Miller Coors, maybe you're not going to help Miller Lite, but when they launch a seltzer brand or something like that, that's the area where you want to come in and talk about clarity, conversion, credibility. When you're working with these smaller companies, let's say, or companies that are poised to scale, they grow with you. What marketing chops do they typically have? Do they typically have someone who's in marketing, or are they looking to outsource the entire function to you?
Yeah, it's a real mix. It's a good question. I think that's something also as we were defining our target. I think when we first started, working directly with founders sounded great. But they often they don't have the time usually and energy that you need to really do a successful program generally. So usually clients that are a good fit for us usually have one in-house marketer or at least a fractional person. We've been working with a lot of fractional CMOs and had a lot of success there. I think it's usually someone, it's not just about the expertise. As I said, a lot of it's about the time. That a lot of times founders just don't have the time even to just approve copy to get something live and things like that and that kind of process. So usually at least a full-time marketer. And then in terms of extra capabilities, we really have a range. So some might have PR or performance marketing people in-house, and we might be doing creative. Sometimes we have some clients that have creative in-house. We do the performance marketing, things like that. So we're pretty flexible, and consider ourselves like an extension of internal teams to kind of create a full marketing sort of team, larger team and group. I think it's something we pride ourselves in, rather than there needing to be a certain type of structure that we work with.
Did you know that Builders is sponsored by Business.com? I'd love to tell you about a new free membership from Business.com for small business decision makers. It's called Business.com Plus, and it's designed to address the pain in selecting new products and services. What is the pain, you might ask? It's things like knowing which vendor is best for your specific business, negotiating pricing, having access to someone who can answer questions for you. The new membership, Business.com Plus, handles all of that with a dedicated advisor, pre-negotiated pricing, and solutions tested and reviewed by experts. Check it out at business.com/plus. That's business.com/PLUS. When you talk about clarity as one of the three things that you work on, I think a little bit about brand identity. And is that how you define it, or is it something a little broader than that?
That can be part of the output. I think a lot of it, like with a lot of clients that have come to us, I think you could get in a room and different clients within that same company will describe the brand differently. So I think it's really clarity on the value proposition. I think really whatever we are working on, whether it's B2B, B2C, anything, Miller Lite or healthcare sales, to be honest, the formula of really figuring out a company's value prop, who their target market is, and how you make that interesting to the target market, that kind of goes across everything, I think, for us, and just making sure we have clarity there. And, Todd, who I know for those who don't know, he leads our brand strategy. And I think workshops with him are always really illuminating, of going through customer journey mapping and really talking through what things look like from the eyes of the customer. I think clients and also ourselves can be very in our own sauce, and it's really helpful to take a step back and really try to look at things from the customer lens. So I think that's often what happens during that clarity process.
I'm curious where you think there might be the biggest disconnects in coming up with clarity, because I've gone through these customer journey maps, as you know, and oftentimes there's like a business point of view on what something is that's different than how a customer would describe something. And as maybe you're not doing the clarity work as much as you're doing the conversion work,
Right.
let's say, why is that clarity so important to what you do and what you specialize in at Mother Bear?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's as I said, a lot of times people like to skip to the conversion work. And I think what we run into is, if you don't really have a solid value prop, it's hard to make ads that convert. Like, we really need to align on what the value prop and who we're talking to, both from like a copy design perspective for the ads, but also the hands-on keyboard stuff of like, who are we targeting these ads to? And you can waste a lot of money doing that test and learn by spending money on meta to figure it out, right? You can just run a bunch of ads and do it for sure, but it's an expensive way to do it. And if we take the time up front to really dig in, a combination of data that hopefully the client has on their customers, not always, but most of our clients do, and some data there, and then also kind of discussion and intuition and putting ourselves in the consumer's shoes. Because a lot of the time someone on the team has experience, whether it on Miller Lite, it's like many of us drink beer, right? So it's like whatever most of our clients, we have some experience with the product. So I think that helps too, just from bringing in knowledge from the past as well.
When you're saying that, like there's got to be a value proposition in the message that matches with someone after they interact with that. I said message, but I meant ad, and interact with that advertisement to actually purchase or buy the product. And so I think that's what you're saying about clarity, match, and conversion.
Yeah, totally. I think what we see is like, because specificity wins. So if you're working on like an electronics client, we have it does chargers, Mac accessories, things like that. Like, you can't just say like it's the best charger in the world, or the perfect charger for everywhere you go. Like that's where a lot of clients come to us. They like to be everything to everybody. And I think when we do the brand exercises, we find the right moments and make ads for that moment. So is like the charger fast? Is the charger small for travel? Right? You can't just say it's good for travel. It's really getting into the specifics about the product that we find converts well. And I think that's why aligning on those touch points with clients early on is helpful before we start spending a lot of money in media.
I agree with you, but let me try to debate that for a second because I think the reason why it's so appealing to have a message that says it's the best charger in the world is because in theory your total addressable market is larger if
Right.
it's literally for everybody and if
Yeah.
everybody should want it. How would you debate against my assertion there and say that by breaking these things up into smaller campaigns, you can actually grow faster, have a bigger runway in the future?
Let's say there were, in terms of reaching everyone for the charger, let's say we figured out there were sort of three use cases, let's say, rather than having one ad that we send to everybody, or like having three different ads, one for each use case. So you can still hit everybody because if the three adds up to 100, but being all things to everybody in one ad just doesn't work in our experience. But you can hit everybody with enough ads.
um, so you create clarity so that you can have conversion, and conversion can be measured in numbers and revenue and profitability and all that stuff. But for like an up and coming brand or brand that wants to grow with you, how do you think about brand value or brand equity? And or do you even think about that? Do you try to quantify it in some way? And how should a CEO or founder or CMO, in your opinion, think about that as an intrinsic measurement in and of itself?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's often this tension people think of as like, is it, are you running brand ads versus performance ad? But I think in our experience, brand actually powers performance. And it doesn't have to be some, big brand TV ad or something. I think still, even at the small levels for clients that maybe aren't spending a lot, maybe, even if say it's 5,000 a month in Meta or something, still those ads need to be laying the foundation. It really starts first, honestly, at that size with the product. Sometimes we've had clients at that size come to us where the product isn't great, especially in CPG. Like we've tried products that they don't taste good, or you order them and it takes weeks for fulfillment, things like that. So I actually think for the small clients, sometimes when they think of brand, they skip to the marketing rather than like you ruin the brand experience if those nuts and bolts aren't right. But assuming that those things are good, I think for us, it's still building the tone of voice, building a consistent look of feel. And the brand is really built in consumers' mind over time. It's not just like a rebrand and the brand is it, right? So I think just think about every touch point, and as we hopefully grow the brand, that let's say if we start just with some simple meta ads, and then let's say we move to video and then move to TikTok or various things, that each time we're building on the foundation from the previous step.
Yeah, and I can say from experience and actually working with you and your team that these little things work. We worked on an auto insurance brand with you, and one of the things that we felt like was our value proposition is being really satisfying, taking something that was an arduous process, selecting auto insurance and making it easy. And just one of the small touches was the car, like the little mascot is smiling. It's
Yeah.
just it's a happy car. And so those really, really little things can go a long way into making something more relatable, more convertible, et cetera. As an agency, maybe not a full stack marketing agency, but you do a lot. Where have you really leaned into using AI, and where have you said, okay, this is still important to be done by by humans and creativity, et cetera?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I started as a copywriter, and I'd certainly take pride in my writing and stuff. And it's been interesting when, I think I started with ChatGPT when it first came out. I was like, oh, this is garbage. And now it's like actually a pretty good writer. And it's gotten used to my writing style and all that kind of stuff. So it's certainly important to stay on top of it as it's changing all the time. Yeah, I'd say when it first came out, we didn't find it super useful like 2 years ago. And I'd say now we like integrate it into almost everything we do. We actually hired like a full-time AI person this year.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's amazing how that's kind of evolved over the last couple of years. And I think he's been great. So in terms of areas where we've been using it, certainly an initial simple stuff, I think like everybody sort of does, of like research, initial thought starters, sort of you can treat it as like a junior copywriter. I think that's kind of table stakes, but I think what Hayden has helped us do is really build custom tools for clients. So for example, we had a donut client that, we want to do a lot of research on, and he built this awesome tool that monitors all of their competitors' social medias. So we're able to get real time data on what they're up to and what they're posting and analyze it. And that kind of stuff's really cool. And it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time.
That's an interesting hire that you all have made, because in a consulting or an agency type business, you might think that type of role might not be supported by the business model, but it sounds like through operational efficiency and stuff you're doing bespoke for every client, you can actually get a pretty significant ROI from that.
Everyone's worried about AI replacing people, and I think who knows what's going to happen there. But I think right now it can be a force multiplier. So it allows an agency of our size to really compete with agencies that are 10 times our size. So I think it allows us to use tools differently and really move efficiently, and have sort of thought starters. As I said, you can use it as a junior copywriter. Design is one thing that it's a little harder. One, I don't think it's very good, but
Hmm.
also if they get you 70% of the way to a headline or a paragraph, it's editable. It's really easy to change. Right now, the design, they're not like layered files. So if it gives you 70% of a good design, you can't use it essentially, right? So I think, that might change over time. So really, it's besides design, though, I think in terms of strategy, deck building, research, we're kind of using it for a lot across the board, even for new business. Actually, we're working on some tools now for like outreach and top of funnel.
I'd love to talk through challenges that marketers or marketing departments are having today, 2025. Can you provide maybe an example of a challenge that marketers are having? You can anonymize the situation if you want, but what are the biggest issues these days in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of sort of global issues going around in supply chain and various things our clients have run into. But I think in terms of a marketing challenge, that I think we've been working on is in 2025, a lot of signal loss in terms of privacy updates, platform changes for our clients on the performance marketing side. And that they were used to doing things a certain way, maybe with a different agency or in house, and we're seeing like a real drop in results. And the thing about a lot of these platforms is they're also using AI a lot, right? You probably noticed as you're using Google, right? There's the
Mhm.
AI sort of summary at the top, and Meta, and they're all integrating AI in some ways really helpful ways, and sometimes a little bit move fast and break things kind of a way. So that even though they're using AI, you really need someone sort of managing AI who knows it and can kind of ride the roller coaster a little bit. And I think that's something we've stayed on top of. And I think as some of the hands-on keyboard stuff has been changing, I think really focusing on creative quality, strong messaging, and focusing on broader audience targeting, since we don't have as much granular targeting, has been helpful. And then also suggesting third platform tools we use a lot, as well. Which I don't know, name drop third platform tools, but there's a lot that we're using to help fill the gap that the platforms such as like Meta and Google used to do on their own. And I think that's been a big challenge for a lot of people, e-commerce brands this year.
You started out in large agencies, or maybe not your first job, but you eventually got to those. And you said you started out as a copywriter. What
Yeah.
was what was the way that you became successful at large agencies and worked your way up? And then what compelled you to go outside of just becoming an executive at a large agency and going out on your own?
There's always sort of like table stakes of like you got to be nice to people and work hard and those kind of things. But I think one thing that worked really well for me, and I think about this for our younger folks as we've moved to a remote world is I was always really closely paying attention to people at the companies I worked at who I thought were doing good work, whether they were my boss or not. Right. So I think that was really important for me as I moved up. And so, it's like if somebody was making a great ad that I like, I would just go meet them and
Hmm.
I talk to them and like learn what they do, and I kind of try to figure out how they got to where they are. And sometimes that would, stuff that, again, in a virtual world, I think is tricky, but I met Max Stinson, if he's watching this, but like he really talented creative on Gatorade, which was something I wanted to work on. And I just remember going into his office, and I don't know, all of his thoughts were kind of like this beautiful mind thing on the wall. Which I don't know, it was just not how I worked. I was a very like write things in a notebook kind of guy, right? And I don't know, it was just like seeing that physically, it was like, oh, maybe we should try that. Like maybe I'll try that instead of just like having stuff. And it did help. The first time we did it, my partner and I, was when we actually got an assignment on Gatorade, and we were pitching the launch for Gatorade G2 at the time. And we worked really hard. We worked a ton of hours. My partner would even sleep in the office, right? So again, there's like some of those like table stakes. But I remember that was the first time we started like putting stuff on the wall, and I would write stuff and he would draw stuff. And I don't know, I think that kind of unlocked something for us that maybe it wouldn't have if stuff was just in my notebook that he couldn't look at in real time, right? Because I just would just like sit and write stuff. Um, and that was like my first big break, is we sold the Super Bowl commercial that launched Gatorade G2. So I don't know, maybe if I wouldn't have met Max and wouldn't have gone into his office that one day, maybe we wouldn't have sold that commercial.
That's great advice. Favorite Gatorade flavor?
I like blue.
Oh, cool, blue.
I like blue. Yeah.
Um,
Is that the wrong answer?
well, for me, it is. I like lemon lime. But Gatorade, great product. It's interesting. I feel like a mistake I made earlier in my career. I wanted to work with people who kind of thought like me, because
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that made things go faster. There was sort of like less tension. I feel like looking back on that wasn't the right way to approach a lot of things. Having people with different processes, working with different styles, like maybe there was kind of getting on the same page initially might take a little longer, but then you got a much better product at the other end, because there were so many different angles you looked at while you were collaborating. I'm curious how you think about team building in an agency, which has got to be super important, because the best ideas got to win no matter where it comes from.
It's different at the big agencies I came from versus how we do it now. I think, especially for us, I mean, we wouldn't be where we are now if we weren't good at hiring. It's probably been the best scale in terms of like running the business. There's a lot of aspects you need to do, right? But I think the right hiring and building teams and fostering collaboration, especially things aren't as simple as they used to be. I think, it used to just be like a writer and an art director and sit in a room, and we didn't even have media at the agency. I mean, it wasn't even thought of. You just like think of fun ideas, right? And now everything we do is so integrated that we don't come up with creative without thinking about the media and making sure that they tie together. Um, they're a lot different now. So I think in terms of building teams versus how it used to be, it's a lot more cross functional than it used to be, and just integrated, and having a lot of people in a room who not only didn't used to be at a room before, but literally they used to be at different companies, is how we think about it.
How are you thinking about the future of Mother Bear in terms of scale? Is it your ambition to scale? And how are you thinking about doing it? Is it more services, more clients, more regions?
Well, Katie's in Europe right now, so I guess we have a
Hmm.
European division.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly looking at growing. We've had a good year this year. I think we're going to end up growing about 25%. So I think that was a good one, and I think it's been really focusing on the areas that we've had success with clients, and also the kind of stuff we like to work on. It's a little bit of a balance, right? And those kind of go hand in hand. So I think as we're thinking about next year, is I think focusing on a couple of those areas that I think, because we work on scaling brands, we've structured ourselves to be a little medium agnostic, in the sense of like, when I was at previous life, if I was at like a digital agency, the answer to every client problem is a banner ad or whatever, right? Like you can't think holistically, because that's how they made money. Or the reverse, I've been at agencies, everything's a TV spot. So I think based on the team we put together, we have experience across a wide range of mediums. So we're fairly agnostic on a lot of that stuff, that we really focus on the problem. And, if you need PR or you need a banner ad, that right is based on the problem, not how we make money. But I think also, despite that, there are a couple areas that we've just really seen unique success in. So just give shout out, since I mentioned Katie, the PR team has been doing really well. So I mentioned the Zillow thing, and that has led to us in data PR working with companies that have a lot of proprietary data and building that narrative and getting them coverage. So we've had a few big wins in that area this year. But I think one thing I'm recently proud of is we've been working with Indeed the last couple of years, Indeed.com. So naturally, they have a lot of job data, right? So we've been helping them just get attention for their internal economists and being the go-to for a lot of media when job reports come out. And the team has done such a great job at that actually during the government shutdown, which, making lemonade out of lemons a little, but during the government shutdown, job data wasn't coming out. So then Jerome Powell, the chair of the Fed, was actually quoting our Indeed job reports. So that was just like a pretty good feeling, I think, and pretty cool on the team. And I think it's just such a great niche for us. I think that's an area I'd like to grow more next year.
Outstanding. Well, Jason, thanks so much for joining me. Congrats on all the growth of Mother Bear. Great to see you.
Thanks. Great to see you. Appreciate you having me.
Did you know that more than 20 million professionals and business owners visit business.com and Business News Daily? Why? It's the best place for resources, advice, and information about how to grow your business. And if your goal is to reach our audience, you should become one of our lead partners, sponsor a section of the site, or sponsor even this podcast. Reach us at business.com/connect. That's business.com/connect.